Now, some of France's most famous actresses have cut off locks of their hair in a video released on Instagram today. Why? Well, it is a show of solidarity with women in Iran, who too have been cutting their hair as part of sweeping protests in the country demanding greater women's rights. Delano de Souza has the report.
For freedom.
They are among the biggest names in French show business. From actresses to singers, well-known personalities cutting off their hair in solidarity. The campaign posted on Instagram aims to raise awareness of the ongoing protests in Iran. In recent days, French feminists have been mobilizing. Protests took place in Paris over the weekend and Parliament held a minute of silence on Tuesday.
Mahsa Amini.
But calls are now growing on the French president to take a stand. The show of support even spreading to the European Parliament in Strasbourg.
We, the peoples and the citizens of the EU, demand the unconditional and immediate stop of all the violence against the women and men in Iran. Until the women of Iran are free, we are going to stand with you. Jian, Azadi, women, life, freedom.
Since Mahsa Amini's death in police custody, the Iranian diaspora have been speaking out, calling on the international community to do more to hold the Iranian government to account.
So we owe it to them, I think, not only to be their voices, but to ensure there are mechanisms in place to hold the Iranian authorities to account. That needs to happen at the UN level. It needs to happen at heads of states. Every country, every member state of the UN needs to actively work towards creating this international mechanism for accountability in Iran.
Iranian authorities have hit out at the United States and Israel for masterminding the protests, which, despite restrictions to the internet, detentions and a deadly crackdown, shows no signs of abating.
Well, joining me now is our film critic Lisa Nesselson to talk a bit more about that video and some other film news as well. Lisa, first of all, on the Iranian video, what did you make of it?
Well, there's some very prominent faces there, and women in their 20s to their late 70s. And these are women who are citizens of the world, who have acted all over the place, who have worked with lots of non-French directors. We have Juliette Binoche, Charlotte Rampling, Isabelle Adjani, Isabelle Huppert, a lock of their hair in the name of freedom. And you have to think that actresses of that caliber probably care about the shape of their hair. So this really is a strong gesture. I'd like to point out that French producers and distributors have invested in Iranian cinema for decades, and distributors have brought the films out in French theaters. Graphic novelist and filmmaker Marjane Satrapi went into exile from Iran in France, and it was here that she published her autobiographical graphic novel Persepolis, which she then turned into a great animated film. Years ago, at least 2 Iranian films were smuggled to the Cannes Film Festival on USB keys hidden in baked goods, I believe. The Iranian New Wave was written about and championed by a broad range of French publications, and directors like the late Abbas Kiarostami and Jafar Panahi, who was recently thrown into prison in Iran, have real followings among French filmgoers. So it's a message that's been brewing for years.
And worth just saying to our viewers as well that coming up in the next half an hour or so, I'll be speaking to one of the individuals who was involved with producing that video here in France. Lisa, though, let's go back to some other French film news now, because the highly acclaimed Dardenne brothers, this actually of Belgium, they've won the top prize at Cannes. Their latest film, Tori and Lakita, follows the relentlessly difficult lives of 2 young asylum seekers. It won the 75th anniversary prize at Cannes back in May. Do you think it was well deserved?
Oh, absolutely. This is a deeply layered film about 2 young people in perpetually dire straits, just trying to get by until they hope they are granted official asylum status and can set about building more stable lives. They're smart, resourceful, incredibly hardworking, and stuck between a rock and a hard place and an adjacent rock and yet another hard place. There is, matter of fact, sexual exploitation to go with financial exploitation. It is absolutely a socially conscious art film, but it's also an action picture that never lets up in its forward motion. Let's take a look into the lives of Tori and Lokita.
Quand on est arrivé en Sicile, il y a eu une femme, Paola, qui venait nous voir dans notre centre et elle nous a appris une chanson de chez elle.
Alla fiera del
la fiera dell'est per 2 soldi un topolino mio padre comprò e venne il gatto che si mangiò il topo che al mercato mio padre comprò.
That's a little more cheerful than a lot of what goes on in the movie. This film has stuck with me because it is so convincing and the characters are so deserving of a break. And because the Dardennes are famous for conducting really meticulous research, I think this film is effective shorthand for what refugees, illegal immigrants, asylum seekers, almost anywhere are up against. And I kind of wish that everybody who thinks of asylum seekers with knee-jerk contempt or distaste could see it. It might plant a kernel of compassion. And the film is just 88 minutes long.
All right, definitely one to watch. Thanks for that, Lisa. Next to the 33rd British Film Festival in the Brittany town of Dinard. It's wrapped up with 3 prizes, all going to the same film. It's called Emily, and it's a new take on Emily Brontë.
It is. Emily opens in the UK very shortly, and here in France next March. And everybody I spoke to loved it or was deeply impressed by it. Let's take a look.
Miss Emily Brontë.
You're off to become a wonderful teacher.
You know I don't like to meet new people.
What do you want to do?
Do you think I could be a writer? I have lots of stories.
Mr. Layton will be tutoring you in French.
He speaks with such poetry. Any man can speak. What I want to know is, can he actually do?
Do what?
Another film at the festival that I really enjoyed is a documentary called The Other Fellow, which gets incredible mileage out of traveling the world to speak to people who are really named James Bond. Now, Ian Fleming, the author, wanted a solid name for his gentleman spy, and he simply stole the name of a famous ornithologist whose classic text on birds Fleming used in his bird watching from his Jamaican estate, Goldeneye. Nobody could have predicted that Bond, James Bond, would be an undiminished cultural touchstone 60 years later. So we meet a Black American sentenced to prison for a crime he didn't commit because when the police asked him his name, he told them, James Bond. We meet a gay actor who says that in acting school, the teacher asked each student what they wanted for themselves 10 years ahead, and everybody said they wanted to see their names on a marquee, and this guy replied, well, my name is already on marquees. Incredibly, there's even a woman with the name as part of a witness protection scheme. So gay, straight, white, black, male, female, absolutely anybody can be a James Bond. And there's also a former James Bond who changed his last name and is glad he did. I also like the film Winners, written and directed by an Iranian filmmaker in exile in Scotland. An enterprising young boy in a village loves movies, which a friend lends him on DVD. He earns money by combing through garbage heaps for scrap metal. And one day, in the middle of a rural road, he comes across a shiny gold object. He has no idea that it's a genuine Oscar. Now, trust me, the explanation for how it got there is actually plausible. What follows is a love letter to movies in general, Iranian cinema in particular, and a look at how fleeting fame can be a curse.
Lots of movies I want to watch this week. Thanks very much, Lisa, for coming in to tell us all about them.